Switch off the. Can I start? Is it working? The people here? Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Increase the volume. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste. I'm Madhavi, and I'm honored here to stand before you as we have gathered to remember and celebrate the life of Dr. V. Krishnamurthy, one of the greatest manager leaders, a doyen of the Indian industry. We are to honor a man who touched many lives in his 70 years of illustrious and active professional life in the service of India. Incidentally, and I think as we celebrate and commemorate 75 years of India independence, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, 75 years, and he has 70 years of his professional life for the service of this country. This Mahotsav is dedicated to the people of India who have been instrumental in bringing India thus far as its evolutionary journey. Dr. Krishnamurthy finds a prominent place as father of PSUs and would be remembered for his contribution to the nation building. Born in Karuveli, Tamil Nadu, Dr. V. Krishnamurthy started his illustrious career as a technician on the airfields during World War II before studying for a diploma in electrical engineering, following which he rose up through the ranks of the Madras Electricity Board. By 1954, he had gained recognition from the Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and was appointed to the Planning Commission in charge of power projects. We are here to celebrate the life of India's best-known technocrat who took up the challenge thrown at him by the then Prime Ministers of India and transformed some of India's largest public sector undertakings, including Bharat Heavy Electricals, Maruti Udyog Limited, and Steel Authority of India Limited. A Padma Vibhushan awardee, a leader who received Japan's highest civilian award, the Grand Cordon of the Order of the Rising Sun, a lifelong believer in the power of education, Dr. Krishnamurthy served as Chairman, National Manufacturing Competitiveness Council, member of National Advisory Council and the Planning Commission. He was also Secretary, Heavy Industries, Government of India. V. Krishnamurthy was chairman of the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and Xavier Institute, Management, Bhubaneswar, and of course, the chairman of COD for 18 years, actually 6 terms as chairman. On behalf of the family, his 2 sons, Mr. Chandra and Mr. Jaikar, and we are fortunate Mr. Jaikar is here, Jaikar Krishnamurthy is here on behalf of COD. We are all very grateful to all of you for being here this evening on a Friday evening, and as we remember and celebrate the life of this great man. Our special welcome to Mr. Ajit Rangnekar, Director General, Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad, former Dean of Institute ISB, Indian School of Business, for accepting to speak at this occasion, sir. Thank you so much. This is a special moment where we share memories because every person here represents a life that V. Krishnamurthy made an impression during his time. Some of you have worked with him, perhaps a few interacted with him, and a few others read and heard about him. We are here to listen to the stories and acknowledge that we have all learned and we are different because we have met Dr. Krishnamurthy. We honor the multitudes of people who worked and walked with Dr. Krishnamurthy. May I request you for a 2-minute silence as a mark of respect and remembrance of this great legend. Oh, sure. Thank you. Leading us in our tribute today is our chairperson of COD board, a pediatric cardiologist from Yale, a medical entrepreneur, and co-founded as a chief dreamer at Teleradiology Solutions, India's first and largest teleradiology company, Dr. Sunita Maheshwari.
Thank you, Madhavi, and welcome everyone. Really a pleasure to have you here today. I know not a happy occasion, but I think Krishnamurthy sir has brought us all together, and that makes it a happy occasion. And specifically happy that his son is able to join us. So thank you so much for being here. So I am now the chairperson of the Center for Organization Development, though I'm a doctor and have no management expertise. But COD was set up in 1980 as a not-for-profit for training. And I've had two lessons that I learned from, I'm going to say uncle, from Krishnamurthy sir, and from his interaction with my father, Dr. B.L. Maheshwari, who set up COD. The first was 1980 when COD was set up. Mr. Krishnamurthy at the time was at the peak. Mike, can you hear? Yeah, yeah. Mr. Krishnamurthy that time was at the peak of his career. In 1981, he took over as CEO of Maruti. In 1980, COD was set up. Now, for such a man who was, as Madhavi said, the doyen of Indian industry, who was meeting prime ministers of our country and other countries, he still took the time out to come to this small startup in Madhapur, which was an idea, which was one man's decision to leave a not for profit for training and education in this country. And Mr. Krishnamurthy came to Madhapur and came for 18 years as chairperson of its board to make sure that this little entity grew and sustained. And I think my learning from that interaction was however big we get, we mustn't forget what we need to give back to others, to society, to institutions, how we must continue to do good. And he embodied that. I think the bigger he got, the more he gave back to institutions such as this. And the learning from that also is he wasn't, and we were just talking to Prof about startups and the unicorns of today. 18 years of an association is a long time. And I think patience, being able to give that kind of time over so many years, is something all of us can really take from that. The second learning is something, and I asked Jacker if I had his permission to bring this up, but in 1992 to 95, Mr. Krishnamurthy had a very difficult time, as we know, and his accounts were frozen. And I remember my father, I was quite young then, my father took money, went to Delhi and gave it to Mrs. Krishnamurthy. I heard today that 5 or 6 other friends also did the same. And sort of because they had a cash flow, the cash flow was frozen. So these 5 or 6 friends, of whom my dad was one, went to Delhi, gave the family money to kind of get through that crisis. And I remember my dad at the dining table saying that, he's been wronged. We are his friends. We must stand by him. It doesn't matter what the government is saying, what anyone is saying. As a friend, I'm standing by him no matter what. And this for me was a very powerful learning. Over the years, I have had friends who have been in trouble, and I have stood by them no matter what. And I used to tell them, you know, my dad stood by a friend of his when he was in trouble. He was exonerated in 1996, and he continued, therefore, till the end of his day to hold COD and my father very dear to his heart. And I think that is why, even though it's been several years since he's been chairperson, he is very close to everyone here. And he was respected not just for the doyen he was, but for the humane side that he showed all of us. This ability to persevere, to give for many years, to stand by friends when they're small and big. And this is something I learned from the kind of relationship that my dad, Dr. B.L. Maheshwari, had with your dad, Mr. Krishnamurthy. So it's truly an honor today to be able to repay that friendship and that in some way with this tribute. So thank you all for being here. COD is blessed to have you all, to have had him, and to have you in the future. Thank you.
We have Mr. Jaikar Krishnamurthy here. Thank you, sir. Once again, I request you to come and say a few words.
By the way, he has the same eyes, the same smile, the same laugh as his father.
Thank you. I just got lucky, I guess. But good evening, everybody. I didn't know I was going to say anything, so I didn't come with anything prepared. It's very touching to see everybody here, and it's very touching that all of you had interactions with Dr. Krishnamurthy. I know him as two persons. I know him as a public persona, and I know him as a private person, as my father. What I want to let you know is that he was the same person what you saw in private. There was no dual personality in him. I think his fundamental philosophy was, I trust everybody until proven otherwise. I'll just share with you one story that happened to me, and that was a life-changing story for me. I graduated from high school at the age of 16, and I was very keen, since I was a young boy, to be a cardiologist. And that was my dream. And my mother encouraged it because my older brother was an engineer. And as you know, most families wanted one engineer and at least one doctor in the family. So when I went to college and I aced all my exams and I went for my interview, and this was in the middle of a social change in Tamil Nadu, when the interviewer asked me as to which caste I belonged to, and he said, I will not admit you. I went home crying. And this is when my mother was very upset with my father, because my father could have picked up the phone and got me admitted to any college, any medical college in India. And he pulled me aside and he said, it's okay. Take this as a lesson. Don't worry about it. But I really think you should be a businessman. And I can tell you, I never looked back. I've made many mistakes in my business. I've succeeded in some, did not succeed in others, but not one time did my father admonish me for failing. He basically said, this is a good lesson for you. And I've never looked back. And this was because of this man's vision of what he thought I could become. And as I said, he was absolutely the same person he was with everybody else, with me. And I really going to miss him. And I also want to tell you that I spent 2 sessions at COD back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when I was trained by Dr. Maheshwari. And I stayed here, I think, for about 3-4 days in the campus. And I still have very fond memories of it. My father was very fond of this institute because I think, as he said, he spent 18 years and he never worked for any company for 18 years. The maximum he worked at any company was only for 5 years. So this was obviously very special. And I'm very happy to be associated with your family. And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much. And appreciate you listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, he is credited as one of the key architects of the high-tech city and Cyberabad, and in founding member of International Institute of Information Technology, IIT Hyderabad. He is the founding director of Software Technology Parks in Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Chennai. We know whom we are talking about, member of COD board, Jack, as he's known here in IT circles. Sir, we request you to primarily come. And I must tell you, his initial career was in ISRO and then in BHEL, and that's the connection. Thank you, sir. Please.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this great event. In fact, I should thank COD for giving me great opportunity to meet with the legendary figure, Dr. V. Krishnamurthy. I'll tell you a small story how it happened. In 1991, government of Andhra Pradesh, combined Andhra Pradesh, they gave me a land in Madhapur, 10 acres, to set up my software technology park infrastructure. That time I was coming every day from Maitrivanam. I had an office. And, nothing else, no buildings except that were nice resort-like buildings with a lot of greenery, and a nice building used to appear on the right-hand side when I was going. I was looking at such a great building, and it looks like a resort. I don't know when I can get into this building. And I used to pass by, and I used to go and set up whatever the critical infrastructure at the 10 acres land. When I went to that first 10 acres, and we were setting up fencing for that 10 acres land, all the farmers used to come with sticks. No, we were doing agriculture here. How can you take this thing? Then I had to take the police protection, got that. So from that day onwards, I wanted to monitor whether these farmers removed the fencing and again started this thing. I used to come and go. And no other building except the COD in this entire road, and all other barren rocks and boulders. One day, my boss, N. Vittal, came to Hyderabad, and his program, I went through his program, what is where he's going and all that thing. One of the items was attending the board meeting of COD. Then I asked him, sir, are you attending the board meeting of COD? Yes, I am on the board of COD. So can I come along with you? So yes, I will introduce to BL Maheshwari. That's how I got into this great campus during the 90s. And I met Dr. BL Maheshwari. And from then onwards, I started using this campus because there is no other office in this area. So I started using as my camp office to monitor software technology park activities happening in Madhapur. So that, and during that journey, that time I did not meet him, Dr. V. Krishnamurthy. When I took voluntary retirement from government, from Software Technology Park, and started my own company, one day Madhavi brought Dr. V.L. Maheshwari to my office. I had a tiny office in Prashashan Nagar in Jubilee Hills. Then Dr. B.L. Maheshwari asked me, can you become part of our board? He invited me to be. So I was delighted because my boss was on the board of COD, and I am getting an opportunity to get onto the COD. And with the luminaries on the COD board with Dr. V. Krishnamurthy, I immediately, without any hesitation, immediately accepted. Yes, sir, I'm accepting the offer. She was there. She was witness to that. Then what happened? Every board meeting, I mean, he used to come, Dr. V. Krishnamurthy, though I knew him that yes, yeah, because I worked in BHL for a very short duration. That time they used to talk about him. With a diploma in electrical engineering, he rose to the position of BHL chairman, and afterwards as a sale chairman, all that. This is not a small thing, right? Even with IITs and Stanford PhDs, I don't think they would have done the contribution what Dr. Krishnamurthy has done for the country. And those days, I mean, those stories people used to talk in BHL about Dr. V. Krishnamurthy and his contribution. When I had an opportunity to meet with him on one of the board meetings, and I was delighted that I met a great legendary figure of India. Subsequently, Dr. B.L. Maheshwari put me on the selection committee of every year. Those days, we used to when identify Dr. V. Krishnamurthy Excellence Award. An award winner, we used to have a big committee, and the committee used to select the person. We used to go to him and convince him to take that award. And that gentleman used to come and give a keynote address, and we used to have a big festival here. Those days, I don't know whether those festivals are happening. And the V. Krishnamurthy endowment lectures, the award winner is to. And during that period, I used to interact with him and I used to learn a lot. Though he was in that high positions, he never displayed even iota of egoism. Such a simple, and he used to give a lot of good advices to me. And though it was a short interactions on this thing, but it's a great man. I think India needs such legendary figures to transform this country. I'm very happy, Sunita, for again bringing back to this great institution on the board of COD. And COD has really played a big role for me in my life, meeting Dr. B.L. Maheshwari, meeting Dr. V. Krishnamurthy, all the legendary figures who used to come to COD those days. And my only request before I close, request to you, you have to bring back that festival to COD. What used to happen earlier, every year, I mean, similar selection process, we should go and invite them and bring them and have that networking, like whatever we are doing here. I think you should bring that festival back to COD. With this, I once again thank COD and management for giving me this great opportunity to talk on this great occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, we now have Professor T.V. Rao, a well-known HR professional, professor, management consultant, and author and speaker. He was chairman of TVRLS Ahmedabad. He was a professor at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. He was also the founder president of NHRD Network. Professor T.V. Rao was instrumental in helping SAIL implement an executive appraisal system from seniority-based promotions those days to merit-based promotions. I think that was the contribution of Professor Rao. He has sent a video message we would like to listen to. You can play it, please.
The Krishnamurthy for almost about 14 years. Since the time Said invited us to review and revise the performance of the system Steel Authority of India in the year 1985, and he just took over as the chairman of SAIL. Before that, he was already known to be a turnaround person, the way I think he turned around all the Limited. And even before that, he was known to have produced a large number of leaders when he was with Bharat Heavy Electronics. His work in BHEL was known by most of the organization development OB people because he's the one who initiated management by objectives in BHEL and also managerial communications, MECOMs, which were popularly known as, which was a great body intervention which connected managers, employees, and the top management well. He had very high respect for professionals from various institutions and used their help to bring about change in the companies wherever he worked. I still remember when he came to Billai to inaugurate the first train-the-trainer program for what we call as the facilitators in performance appraisal. He was given, of course, a big welcome by the entire live branch. And in his inaugural address, he started by saying that I have gone through your performance appraisals. And I'm so happy to have seen you all rated as star performance, great performance. So excellent performance. And I want to ask you one question. What is the secret of such excellent performance in, say, producing a loss-making company? I think this question by Dr. Krishnamurthy boomerang everywhere, and during the dinner that night, I can remember many managers saying, I think this is the kind of the chairman who can call spade is what we need. And I think most of you know the kind of turnaround that took place in Srinagar in India. Dr. Veer Maheshwari worked very closely with SAIL, and he initiated the Priorities for Action project, which is talked about across the world as a great Puri kind of intervention. I later was interacting with Dr. Krishnamurthy when he was the chairman of the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad. We had long discussions about the choice of the new director at IIM. And I still remember at one point in time we had intense discussions about what are the qualities of the leader and who should be heading the IIM Ahmedabad. Much later in the year 2010, I had the privilege again of working with him on a committee. Both IIM Ahmedabad and SAIL was celebrating their Golden Jubilee. And on the occasion of the Golden Jubilee, we constituted a committee to award HR for outstanding HR work by the manufacturing sector. At the time he was having a cabinet rank and he was in charge of the manufacturing technology and the kind of things and sitting in the young, he chaired that particular committee. Whenever I approached him, I found him to be a great leader. He built many leaders and wherever he has worked, PHL, Bharti Udyog, SAIL, and later in planning commission and wherever he has worked. Very humble, all the time sensitive to the needs of the people, very close to people. In my view, he is the personification of human resource development. We have learned a lot. In fact, he inaugurated the first national conference of the HR network in Madras in the year 1987. Later, he chaired the first HR Awards Committee. And I remember still that when some of the people were being considered for SAIL and now some of the members said that, look, since you are the chairman of the committee, we would want to say that we should avoid giving awards to anybody from SAIL. And I remember his remark, if my being the chairman of this prevents some of the deserving candidates from my company from getting an award, I would like to be excused from chairing this. But we prefer to go by what he has said. And he took a lot of pains in whatever committees were there. He had been a great asset to Central for Organization Development, and many times we have had some good interactions with Dr. Veer Maheshwari. We must celebrate a great personality like him, who is the role model and who is the personification of what we talk as optimist values, openness, collaboration, trust, autonomy, authenticity, and confrontation, and things like that. We should celebrate, and I hope COD brings out a good biographical volume on Dr. Krishnamurthy because he is such an inspiring soul. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I hope we will have good celebration of Dr. Krishnamurthy's life and works. My tribute to Dr. Krishnamurthy and all the best for COD.
Yeah, the next speaker, I would like to invite Mr. Ramam Atmakuri. Ramam worked for 3 decades in IT and manufacturing industries. He was head of the India R&D centers of multinationals Barn and Invensys and was center head of Cognizant Hyderabad before moving to as managing director LV Prasad Eye Institute here in Hyderabad. Actually, Ramam started his career in 1984 in SAIL as a management trainee, and perhaps one of those who has been highly inspired. And he is here to share his experience of his time. Please, Mr. Ram.
Namaste. Thank you very much, Madhavi Garu, for this opportunity. When she invited me for this event, I told her that I've read the news about VK sir and then felt sad. And then I was part of the system when he was working in sales. So I just thought I'll share those with you today. So I joined in '84 as a management trainee in Durgapur Steel Plant, and just fresh from finished my post graduation and then joined there. I was undergoing training in the plant, and people used to say, "This plant will be profitable only if it is shut down." And I was not understanding what does this mean. If the plant is shut down, how can this be profitable? But I was still a very young student, a young graduate that joined from college, and also 1 year passed. From there, then I was working in Calcutta, and suddenly there was a town hall meeting, and they said the chairman of SAIL would address all the executives in this place. So we went there to the headquarters. Mr. Samaropungavan was the chairman of that SAIL at that time, and there was a news item the day before that SAIL made 375 crores of losses, and I can relate to what Dr. Rao, Professor Rao was telling just now. 375 crores loss in a year. To put things in perspective, my salary was about 1,500 rupees that time. So from a 1,500 rupees salary to imagine that 1 crore loss a day, just putting a mathematics student view on that, it was just really amazing on how this can happen and all that. Around that time, and another one could relate to, just 2 years later, there was my HR asked me to come to meet consultants from IIM Ahmedabad. So I went there. This was already about 3 years after I joined. So they asked me, so we are doing a study here to check if a bond is, all of those management trainees used to sign a 5-year bond, whether a bond is required, and if there was no bond, if it could attract more engineers. And of course, for us thinking that 5-year bond, there were not many jobs anyway. So we signed a bond, so it was all right for that. But then just to be bounded by a bond, that was preventing a lot of engineers from IITs and all to join. So based on the feedback, Mr. V. Krishnamurthy sir removed that bond for people who have signed it and for all those who would come in future. That has attracted a lot of talent from IITs and IIMs and all into SAIL, and then that's a kind of a vision. I'll just share a couple of other examples, the big ones that are very, very impactful. I was telling you that it's a 360 crore losses, and you would say so many star managers, how can you make a loss-making company? There was nothing like a production planning in the company. The plants used to produce steel, and their bonus system was based on the quantity of tons of steel produced, not what the customer will need and all that. So very semi-finished goods were just produced and then sent to all the stockyards, and they will lie in the stockyards here in the branch offices, carrying a lot of inventory costs. But then the plants would get their bonus, and I was from the marketing organization, so I had a grudge against them. So he changed the game for that, and he said, the bonuses of the plant will depend on how much is sold, and not based on what you just produced and all. That has brought in the sales and the production team onto the same table, and has set in a lot of production systems, planning process and all that, and which has actually changed the game a lot. There was a lot of overtime at that time as part of the bonus, and then there was a lot of overtime. I remember VK sir stopping overtime and then there was a lot of resistance, trade unionism and strikes and all that. He didn't budge. He just pushed and then stopped all of those things and then turned to the company. Another initiative that I was part of, maybe at that time I was maybe 28 years old. Priorities of action, there were 4 priorities of action that he defined. And then all the employees, that time maybe 150 plus employees in plants and sales offices. Every single employee was touched by that half-day workshop. Everybody was trained on that. Things like reducing cost, improving operational efficiency, developing a better customer service and things like that. On those 4 themes, each and every employee was covered by that, and that has actually changed the culture. He believed that right from chairman to doorman, everybody should have a sense of purpose. Everybody should believe in that sense of purpose. Only then you can transform a company. And also that has actually changed all of those. There was one other last initiative that I was a part of with a World Bank aided loan. SAIL engaged US steel engineers and consultants. This was late 80s. And he engaged them actually to transform all the warehousing and sales and distribution network. There was a lot of wastage in handling of steel and all of it. In the MIS, people used to report 10,000 tons of steel wastage, but 10,000 in a million ton of steel was a rounding error. But then for him, 10,000 tons into 20,000 rupees average price of steel is that kind of a money to the nation that has been wasted. And also that's a kind of an awareness that's raised among people, and then that has transformed the company. So 5 years, 85 to 2000, I think, was a part of SAIL. The duration is very limited, finite duration, but I think the impact that he has made was timeless and priceless. When I was thinking of all of this, then I remembered the book that Louis Gerstner, who transformed IBM, wrote about even elephants, or why can't elephants dance, or even elephants can dance. IBM at that time in 1990, when VK sir left SAIL, but IBM was a profitable company. In 93, because of changes in computer industry, several of you would know, it has made $16 billion of losses. That's when Mr. Louis Gerstner came in and then transformed the company. And he wrote a book that why can't even elephants can't dance. I'm just thinking that VK sir has not written his book, but he has transformed multiple elephants, BHEL, SAIL, Maruti, and all that. So I think it's a great privilege actually to be working at that time when he was chairman, and Mrs. Gandhi brought him as chairman, and also I feel very privileged, and I would like to thank you for this opportunity to share my experience. Thank you.
Thank you. I just broke my specs. Okay. I just would like to read an anecdote sent by Mr. Ram Mohan, who was then personal staff of Dr. Krishnamurthy. He says that initially the reaction in SAIL to his appointment was not very positive. Many senior officers expressed doubts whether he would be able to stem the rot, as SAIL was passing through a very difficult phase, was making a loss of almost 1 crore a day. Morale of the employees was at the lowest ebb, and the overall picture was dismal. One of the managing directors, who considered himself to be the aspirants for the top job, even went to the extent of saying that there was no dearth of talent within SAIL, so why an outsider was appointed who has no experience of steel making? In this context, I remember an incident. I had accompanied Dr. Krishnamurthy to Udyog Bhavan to meet Mr. Natwar Singh, Minister of State. Just at the point he was entering the minister's chamber, a big industrialist from shipping industry entered, and seeing Dr. Krishnamurthy, he sarcastically remarked, "Here is a chairman of a company which makes a loss of 1 crore a day." The remark was in bad taste, and Dr. Krishnamurthy promptly retorted, "Let me tell you, the day I leave SAIL, it will be making a profit of 1 crore a day." And sure enough, in 1990, the year he left SAIL, it made a profit of 1 crore a day. Well, he acknowledges with deep respect and affection how Dr. VK was largely responsible for mentoring him and achievements in his career. He was the former managing director of Hyderabad Industries Limited, a Birla Group company, and served on the board of the center as well. Abhay headed the corporate office of Bharat Technologies Group in Delhi, where he worked closely with Dr. Krishnamurthy and his sons, Mr. Chandra and Mr. Jaikar. Mr. Abhay Shankar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madhvi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Sunita. Thank you, Jaikar, for being here. And thank you, Ajit, for agreeing to come here and speak on this occasion also. It's truly a great honor for a small guy like me to be asked to speak at this tribute ceremony. Um, Dr. Krishnamurthy has been my guide, mentor, and benefactor. I don't shy this saying at every forum that I am what I am today thanks to Dr. Krishnamurthy. So he's my corporate father. I'm extremely grateful that Jaikar was able to share some insights with us today. I would like to pay my tribute to Dr. VK, as we call him affectionately, by celebrating his life, achievements, and teachings with you all. And what better place can there be than other than the Center for Organizational Development, a temple of management thought, management training, and consulting, created by Dr. B.L. Maheshwari and co-created by Dr. V. Krishnamurthy. Dr. V. Krishnamurthy was an amazing person, a patriot, thought leader, and a great contributor to the nation through his several avatars. His CV would run into pages. But I would like to therefore share with you my personal experience because I had the privilege of working with him for about 6 years. And I would share those tiny little incidents which are very precious that I had the fortune of interacting with him. I worked under him as the head of the corporate office of the Bharat Technologies Group, which was a clutch of companies owned by him and his sons. And I was very raw, and I think I was quite a raw guy, if you ask me. But those were the best years of my entire 40 years long career. One of the most incredible things I found was during the course of my life, I have come across so many people who, like me, proudly proclaimed that Dr. V. Krishnamurthy was their mentor, guru, and idol. People very much older than me and sometimes much younger than me, which I found remarkable because it meant that he developed top-notch leaders in large numbers over several decades and irrespective of age, caste, and creed. The fact that Dr. VK has mentored such a huge number of people and was sitting at top-notch positions became an inspiration for me. And in my very small way, I made that my goal. And I judge myself how many people have I developed, how many of them are sitting in good places. The technique that Dr. VK applied was that he first made a good assessment of the person's capability, and then he would thrust an immense amount of responsibility on that person. He would drown them with exciting opportunities, not to see them fail, but he took the responsibility of making them successful. His mentees had no option but to swim in rough waters and perform. He respected people and somehow made sure that he got the best out of them. His people management was brilliant. One day I went to him in Delhi, and this is true. And I told him that, look, you're giving me too onerous a responsibility, and that I'm fearful of failure, which I knew could cause significant damage on the business. He simply smiled at me and said, yes, I know, but I have full faith in you. And I also know that you will not do anything foolish, but will come to me if you are stuck. That's all he said. And by his body language, I knew it's time for me to get up and go. So I came out of his room and thought about what he said. And then it dawned upon me that he was a master of delivering management lessons with incredible brevity. Here, with this one simple sentence, he had motivated me to no end. He said, I trust you. He expressed his trust in me, and thereby he won my commitment. So I said, here's a man, how can I let him down? And yet, he also passed a polite cautionary message to me. And these are my words, and probably he meant this way, but look, chum, don't do anything foolish. Come to me come to me when you're not sure. And rather than take the risk of causing any serious damage to my business, come to me, don't feel shy. We will jointly resolve the problem. The beautiful thing was that he became my team player. He became a part of the success and the failure. So how could I fail? I had no fear. Did I fail? Hell no. How could I? I never forgot this wonderful technique of motivating people. Over time, I started realizing what a brilliant person he was. His one-liners would sound very simple and ordinary, but I knew they always had some very valuable lesson embedded in them. Some of his memorable one-liners were, let the best not be the enemy of good. But I was a greedy guy. I used to hang on to every word he said. And I took a lesson. And trust me, I've seen chairmen of companies fail because they were blindlessly chasing perfection. And I've used this adage, let the best not be the enemy of good, to my advantage. Very powerful. He'd also tell us youngsters that he's a student of management. A person who had transformed mammoth organizations like Steel Authority of India, BHEL, claimed with full authenticity, he meant it, that he was still learning. I took that statement as a life lesson and told myself that I too have to be a learner always. He used to tell us that if you don't change with time, the winds of change will break you and destroy you and force you to change. What a wonderful lesson. So what I took from it is that, look, whatever happens, I must change with the times. Dr. VK's insights and his visionary outlook on every aspect of management was amazingly progressive. I kept absorbing all this during those valuable years I had with him. I had the good fortune of sitting in board meetings and review meetings with him. They were brilliant. They were like MBA lessons for me. Hearing him give his views on what was being presented, his ideas, his suggestions were nothing short of brilliant. And in all this, I kept learning. He gave immense importance to people. During his days at SAIL, he came up far ahead of those times with the concept of recognizing human capital as assets. He would tell us that the most difficult thing is to change the mindset of people. Simple statement, but a great management lesson. So I took this lesson very seriously in all my efforts at organizational transformation. I tried to copy Dr. Krishnamurthy, and I started also calling myself as a transformational guy. Of course, no comparison to what he was, but in my own small way. But I took that lesson very seriously, and whenever I said about transforming an organization, because of that lesson, I first addressed the fact that I have to change the mindset of people. So my first set of initiatives would be to change the mindset of people. Then would come all my organizational transformation initiatives. On a lighter note, he would tell me that with most people, you have to repeat a thing 5 times for it to be really absorbed by them. But the trick is, this is what he said, but the trick is that every time you tell them, it should not sound as if you're repeating yourself. I found this to be very useful. I feel the best tribute we can give to Dr. VK is to learn and benefit from his teachings. And standing before you at this august institution, I urge you all to use COD for your management consulting needs and training needs. Let us recognize the Center of Learning as a tribute to the contributions made by Dr. V. Krishnamurthy and Dr. P. L. Maheshwari in the field or to the field of management. Thank you so much for allowing me to share some of my personal learnings from Dr. V. Krishnamurthy, a management guru par excellence who has done so much for the nation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have an audio message from Mrs. Savita Mahajan. She was Deputy Dean of ISB and who has also been instrumental in setting up the Mohali campus. She worked with Dr. Krishnamurthy both in Maruti and later in Bharat Technologies. There's a technical glitch. We're not able to see the video, but audio messages here. So perhaps we can just...
Hi, everybody. I'm Savita Mahajan. I've had the privilege of working with Dr. VK from the time I started my professional career way back in 1981 at Maruti. Today, I remember him sadly, but very fondly for all the years that I have known him and admire him as a human being, as a great professional leader, as my mentor at the start of my professional career. It's hard to think of so many things that I have learned from him, but let me try and share some memories and some things that have stayed with me in all these years. Dr. VK was a man of few words. He was a great listener. And one of the things I remember very clearly is that whenever one walked into his office to discuss something, he would put aside everything else. He would have a clean table. He would, tell his secretary that he was not to be disturbed. And was not multitasking, unlike how many of us, do now. He was all attentive. He made you feel as if, there was nothing else that mattered at that moment. Whatever you came to discuss with him, either on your own or at his behest, was the issue for the moment. I really admired that trait of his. And interestingly, of the many one-line nuggets he would share with me, one that has stayed with me all these years is, he once famously told me, never open your mouth unless absolutely necessary. I mean, at that time I was a bit amused, but as I grew in my professional career, I realized the wisdom of that. And I suppose I imbibed it so much that my colleagues over the years have often told me that I'm a good listener, and also, I guess, a person of fewer words. um, so that and many other things, I couldn't have had a luckier start to my career. I had the opportunity to travel with him for conferences, for events, where I met, leaders from industry, not only in India, but from all over the world. And, at that age, it was such a privilege, the 6 or 7 years that I worked with him at Maruti before he moved on to head sales. Although after he left sale and sort of led a series of small and mid-sized companies that were part of the sort of family enterprise. I once again worked with him for 2, 3 years before I moved on. And similarly, he was a great delegator. He was a great developer of people. In fact, I think everybody knows that uh, of the people who worked with Dr. VK, I mean, the large numbers went on to, head other organizations, all sort of, under his tutelage. He truly was a giant, uh, and let people grow, let people learn from their mistakes. He was always mentoring, guiding, but I never saw him sort of give a diktat to anybody. He would make his point of view. He would, you know, but he always ended by saying, "Do what you think is right." And again, it was such a great sort of characteristic. It made you want to give your best. It made you, perform so that you didn't let him down, and you sort of met, his expectations and his trust. Um, I continued to be in touch with him for many, many years. In fact, probably till about 4 or 5 years ago, uh, when he was mostly, living in Chennai and not moving around so much. So we spoke a couple of times on the phone, but I think I probably met him last around his 90th birthday.
Well, I think that ends with our, the tributes that we have received. We request our guest and keynote speaker for this evening. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, he classifies himself as a dreamer, an incurable optimist, and a helper. Former dean of ISB, where he espoused entrepreneurship and innovation in socially important sectors like food, health, and education. Currently Director General of Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad, aims to bring about research institutions, academic institutions, industry, startups, incubators, accelerators, VCs, civil society members, and governments on a common platform to fast track innovation. Please put your hands together, welcoming Mr. Rajiv Rani.
Thank you, Dr. Madhu. It's good to see so many friends here and so many people that I've known and been associated with. But I've never had a chance to meet Dr. VK. So for those of you who are wondering what the hell am I doing here, so am I. But in my life, there are some people, one of whom is Jay. And when Jay says anything to me, I only thing I do is sing that old Hindi film song, Tumne Pukara aur Hum Chale Aaye. So, before I start, and because we are talking about organization development and transformation and leaders, and because Kalpana is here too, I want to pay my homage to my guru, Dr. Dharani Sinha. If I am what I am today, it is thanks to Dr. Sinha. And I'll be eternally, eternally grateful to him for everything that he has done to have truly transformed me in my life. By the way, COD was one of the first place I visited where I came to Hyderabad. Simply out of curiosity, because I had, of course, known of Dr. Maheshwari. So I came in to see. And, it's always good to give back to you. So when I was asked to speak, and I said, they are speaking here, so let me just step back. Now, fortunately for me, interestingly, I was actually interviewed for ISB by Savita. And she reported to me. And, I come from a consulting background. And as consultants, we are, unless we know a framework, we don't know what to do. And here was a startup institution. Here was something that I had no idea of education at all. Right? So I said, what do I put in my head? How do I run with this? Then I found that Savita had worked for Maruti. So I said, tell me about it. That is when, and I tell you, she is a true bhakt. If there is one word to her, that was gospel. Right? So I started hearing, this is what we did, this is how we did, this is what we did, etc. At the same time, way back in 99 when I was in, thank you, so sweet of you. No, we leave it here. Thank you. I tend to move my hands and I can. I had also seen Chandrababu. And I also started beginning to see the transformation in AP. And the third, of course, was what I was living, which was ISB. Right? So those three got me going and said, I need to put some structure to what is happening and how do big transformations happen. And we're not talking about, just building something which makes a lot of profit. These are social organizations. These are organizations that transform on a big scale. And therefore, my entire thing was, what is it that is common in that? And over the years, I kind of developed some mental model of that, and then was fascinated to see it again repeating itself in 2014 when this state was formed. So what I'm going to do is, because we are here COD and because I don't have any personal stories to tell, I'm going to step back and look at what are some of the building blocks that have helped these leaders to transform. And I'll broadly use four these things. One is what I heard secondhand about Dr. Krishnamurthy at Maruti. Second is the AP then of Dr. Chandrababu Naidu. Third, of course, is ISB, which I lived through. And the fourth, to some extent, is Telangana and its transformation. Okay? So when you start with these things, what are some of the first, and I think obviously the first and perhaps the biggest, is to have a huge, big vision. And we all say, every company, right? First thing they know, you must have a vision and you need to write something. But these people created a truly aspirational vision, something that was scary, audacious, something that, if it had succeeded, would have been world-changing, but was so scary that most people would say, are you mad? And in fact, when I told my friends in Hong Kong, from where I had come, that I was joining ISB, that was exactly what they said. Are you mad? You'll ruin your reputation. You cannot build a world-class thing. My defense, of course, was I didn't have a reputation to start it, so there's nothing to worry, so don't worry. But at the same time, it was that challenge that made me come. And when I remember when Savita spoke to me about it, he says, when we joined Maruti, he said, we are not starting Maruti. We are transforming the automobile sector in India. And for those of you who have lived through the Ambassador, Padmini at that era, obviously it was hugely transformational, hugely, right? Similarly, what was AP? A backwater. Hyderabad was on nobody's thing. I had actually only known of Hyderabad because I came to ASCII. in 81.
Since Pakistan was more popular than
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and to think that I'm going to transform that state into a world-class state. As I said, when somebody said we're going to groom leaders and to be a top-ranked business school in the world, I was called a fool. Right? So, and similarly, when Telangana was formed, right, to say that we all know, I mean, those of us who have lived there, we've known with the scares, the fears that we lived over, our anxiety, our doubts whether what will happen to this place, and to say that no, we will transform it to make it this thing. So everywhere, it's these people who have come out with a seriously transformational vision that gets people, and there are suckers like me. So even when I remember in 2014, on the second day of taking over, KTR came to, I got a frantic call saying, Minister Saab aa raha hai? I said, Minister Saab aa raha hai? Must be, something. And we spent 4 hours and he says, don't talk to me about the Telangana entrepreneurship ecosystem. He made me start with him and we did it. And he said, you people have been talking, now let's do it. So it's that kind of something that makes is what. So I think that's the first and the biggest building block. And think especially of politicians, to stick your neck out. And that's another thing I learned, that if you want to really be a success in that vision, you have to stand up and talk about it loudly, because you cannot back off. So that was to me the first thing. But you can create the most beautiful vision. And I remember, again, another anecdote. I went and did a song and dance to one CEO in Delhi at ISB. And he says, okay, I've seen the general, but is there an army behind him? And of course, there was no army in those days. I mean, what bad thing. So I think pulling all the stakeholders together is the second and a truly big and important thing, which therefore requires an immense ability to tell story. Satish Chandra, the other day I was asking him, I said, Satish, what are the characteristics of a good startup? He said, she must be able to tell a good story. And I believe Dr. VK was phenomenal at storytelling. Savita tells me that when they went to Japan and they met, he says, the way he would create this vision of an India which is a huge market and which will have immense potential, and you will have access now from that costly this thing to a totally new world, etc., etc. He says that is how and then apparently when he had to talk to the trade unions, it was different. When he had to talk to the government, so it was not different stories, but the same stories in different ways, right? And you talked about saying giving the 5 this thing. So apparently, I've seen the same thing with Rajat. When Rajat talked about ISB, I mean, I said, why am I sitting? Man, I have to be there and I have to be a part of that. It was, I think, in late 90s. I was still in Hong Kong. I used to head the consulting practice for Pricewaterhouse. I get a call from the Indian ambassador saying, we have got this chief minister coming and you have to take a table and fill it up with 10 people. I say, whom? I don't know who this is. Big. So I called my fellow partners. I said, free lunch, and they're serving whatever it is you want, or I'll pay for it, but come. So these were 5 or 6 Brits, couple of Chinese, an American, and yours truly. And Chandrababu Naidu walks in a few minutes late. And those of you who have heard Babu speak, he has a pronounced accent. So these people are looking at me, say, where the hell have you brought us, man? And he started in the usual way, thank you, this thing, and they're giving me glares now. And then he started unfolding his vision. And I still remember that day he talked about the vision of 2020. At that time, he was talking about Vision 2020 and how this is going to happen and how that is going to happen. And so I'm not telling you a story. Every single thing I'm saying is on my website. They say, website? Sitting has a website. This is around 99. And every quarter I report progress on this on my website. And my guys say, hey, we are taking him to UK, man. We want a prime minister like this. Different people tell stories in different ways, but those stories inspire you. And that thing that he had made in 99 and 2002, when I had to come, I said, I know this. I'm going to be a part of it. Right? So how you tell a story, how you convince others, those are all in apparently when ISB got started or was talked about, people were interested, but they thought it 1 year MBA light, very expensive, rich man's school. It was Professor Sumantra Ghoshal who went from city to city. And if you have heard Sumantra, I mean, he could convince anybody about anything. He was the ultimate master. And it was because of Sumantra that ISB was able in the first year to attract students. Again, that ability to sell the vision to a vast variety of people, saying, uh, again, as I said, KTR, he came and convinced me. He said, no, this is what we are going to do. We are going to do it because we are going to make the biggest incubator. I said, "Ye kya baat kar raha hai?" Maybe. But then he convinced me, right? So it's that second thing is that ability to bring everybody on board. And when you're working for a big cause, you can do it. And that cause, so when you're saying I'm going to transform the entire automobile sector, and every day if I'm sitting in that horrible ambassador car, of course I'm going to be a part of that. So that is the second thing. The third thing, which all of these people did, and again it's the same combination, is a very powerful sense of collaboration. So apparently Dr. VK is saying, please don't reinvent the wheel. Don't waste your time trying to build a car from within. And that was, if you like, the original Maruti idea was to build an indigenous car. He said, forget all of this. We have to make a successful industry. Let's go. So that was one. Similarly, when we built ISP, it was the same thing. He said, we are not going to reinvent everything. Let's catch 3-4 partners. The second thing apparently he did, and this is again a story I heard from Savita long time ago. I may get a little bit wrong, but I think the essence of it. He was very clear that he was not going to settle for the second best. So they had discussed everything, Maruti. And then after that, Mr. Bhargav went to Japan to see the factory. And apparently Mr. Bhargav came back and was telling about his visit in this. And while talking, he casually mentioned that, they're coming up with a new model. So apparently Dr. VK just jumped. He said, what? So Bhargav didn't know what hit him. He said, no, just don't. He says, they cannot have a new model and give me an old model. I will not take a second. And apparently he threatened Mr. Suzuki that he'll cancel the contract and he will not allow it. And that Suzuki did not have. Similarly, when we started ISB, that was, for India, we said, like hell for India. We were going to have start with something which is the best and we'll do the best. Same way when, KTR and wanted to start something, he said, my this thing is not Bangalore. Bangalore does not come in my comparison set. My Silicon Valley, I want collaboration with them. I want the best that you can get. So people who build these things, their visions are not, I will do something. Their visions are stretched and they want to, but they're willing to collaborate. I remember, similarly in ISB, one very senior CEO, again from Delhi, there's something about Delhi, I think, came and said, why does India need, this is a very expensive facility. Why does India need? I said, I'm sorry, I'm not a child of a lesser God and I will not settle for, I deserve the best and I'm going to get it. Today, if you look around us, everything is world class. That old mindset that we had around 2000 that we'll take something lower is gone. And these people, I mean, look at, this better than anybody else. When you build Cyberabad, when you built high-tech city, there was nothing second class about it. Everything was built to. So it is that willingness, otherwise the normal tendency is that, if I'm aiming for the sky, let me start small, let me start with something. No. They always went for the best and they always went for the top and they always tried to do. At the same time, they were all very, very clear about what they bring to the party. So it was never the collaborator doing you a favor. Apparently, he told Mr. Suzuki about what a great big market India was going to be for them, how they will learn how to sell into other developing markets, etc., etc., etc. I remember that we telling both Kellogg and Wharton that India was going to be the next big global market, and your professors better know about India if they are going to advise your people. So we are doing you a favor by giving you access equally. And it's true. Right? So I think how you negotiate, and you negotiate hard, was an equal thing. At the same time, again, in all these cases, we also learn to share. So again, apparently they shared openly with Suzuki. I know we've shared openly with our partner schools, because building trust. Why did companies come to Hyderabad, right? Because there was trust, but also to us. I remember Chandrababu calling Rajat and saying, I need 5 acres of your front land because Microsoft wanted it. And we said, hey, what is this, man? I mean, have 5 acres front land, front. And Rajat said, no, nonetheless, we have to give it. So we did, we signed everything. And then he takes out another piece of paper. I took 5 acres, here is 16 acres at the back, without asking. How would I not trust him? How would I not trust him? Right? So these are people who build trust throughout their thing. His thing was, if I'm going to talk to a vendor, that vendor must believe what I'm telling him. And that was their thing. So the whole issue of shared purpose, how do you get vendors, customers, trade unionists, government, etc., to share in that purpose on a different scale? When we started ISB, and I think you mentioned this, we said, who is the first person that a guest meets when they come to ISB? It is the watchman. Who is the next person that they meet? Is that when they go to the to dump their luggage? So unless those people feel that they are an integral part of ISB, this was a lesson, by the way, from Disney. All of those people are not, but they believe, think, and act as if they are Disney, right? So we created the Sahayak Divas. For one whole week, there are games and things for all the people, watchmen, sweepers, cleaners, everything. And then on one day, the students, the faculty, and everyone, and the dean feed all the staff as a thank you. So I believe in the Maruti again, they created that thing where everyone went. So that is the whole thing about collaborating. The third thing, and this is something that in India, that is the fourth thing to some extent. The third thing was collaborating and sharing. The fourth thing, and this is where in India we find it very, very less, and this is again another lesson I learned when I looked at it. We are great at forming strategy. Way back when I was still in Hong Kong, I created a forum of Indian professionals. We used to all meet during weekends, Friday nights, Saturday nights, and most of us worked in China. And we had seen China. When I went to China first in 1982, China was more backward than India was. And by 90s, we were going there and say, look at this, man, look at this. So we used to all come, and after the second round, this man, they do this. So one day I got fed up. I must have had one too many. But I said, look, let's not do this. Let's meet formally and let's collect all this knowledge and let's create. So we created a forum of Indian professionals. And that, we started collecting knowledge. But the Chinese heard about it. So the vice mayor of Tianjin said, I'm coming to Hong Kong and I'd like to meet you. No, of course. So he said, look, I'm going to create a whole square, one whole block. We'll call it India block. And I want you to bring Infosys, Wipro, Satyam, this, that. I said, look, I don't have power, but I'll introduce you to them and you do what you want. So all this happened over dinner. And Chinese dinners are 8-course dinners, or which you keep doing Gampai. It starts first by saying to the great people of China and to the great people of India, Gampai, then to your state, then to my state, then to, by the time we had come to your pune and my pune, we were both quite drunk. So I said, yeah, all this is true, but we also need to learn from you people. So normally the Chinese are not very open, but by that time he had also had too much. He said, you know, India strategy 100, China 60. But India implementation 20, China 100. And that is stuck in. But when I looked at these organizations, what they also did was they ensured top quality implementation. I know when we conceived of T-Hub, we had initially a lot of problem, and KTR said, what the hell? And he brought in Jayesh. And, you know, while the vision is KTR's, a lot of the implementation happens because Jayesh just does tack. You go to Jayesh and he'll do it. Right? So Randeep Sudar in CBN's office. Anything you wanted, you to just call Mr. Sudan and it would get done. Same way, you know, there was the starting from Mr. Bhargav and others that strong and people like Savita and others who actually were the implementation folks. And there was enormous focus on implementation. You talked about some of these things. They gave autonomy. But you know what they did? They also put very strong, effective targets. All of these, right? So apparently in Maruti, they were told that we are not just also building this thing, we have to create the entire network of auto components also. So we have to create an entire, today that is our, perhaps our second largest exporter of this country. Right? So it is that setting that vision and saying you will definitely do it. I remember we used to hate our board meetings because all that happened was that the target kept. I said I quit consulting because I didn't want this 35% increase, and now I'm getting this. You know, but these people did that, but they gave you the full autonomy and support to make it. You know? So there is, by the way, a fascinating story which I first thought was, hey, this is fun, but I realized what a master stroke of management which Chandrababu used to practice. So every 3 to 4 months, we would be summoned. CM wants to meet you. So CM had either a photographic memory or had a great ability to go back and think. Last time you said this, have you done it? What about this? You said you'd do it. So you couldn't BS, you had to be careful. But all that was all right. But the worst thing was after we finished everything, then he'll sit back. And then he'll always say, what else can I do for you? What else can I do for you? No, just think. You're meeting the chief minister. You can't tell him nothing, sir. You can't ask him for something small. So, jhakka marke, we have to think of something big. In that process, we found that we were getting stretched. By the way, I now use that tactic with my team. What else can I do for you? Budgetary review. Stretch. But these people created those stretch targets. It's the same with KTR. You know, just when he said, now we have to build the biggest. We just started this. No, we must build the biggest. And you must do it in 2 years. So, hello, where does all? So, I think it is that ability to create a great team, find people who actually work, then support them to the hilt, but give them stretch targets. This is a very, very important factor. And this is where I find when I also look at many other institutions, this is where institutions actually fail. we don't have great people who can implement, or we don't give them the freedom, especially in the government sector. To have created that kind of a sector is regrettable. And then the last thing in all of this is the culture. And again, we talked about it, right? How do you create that culture where people strive, where people feel empowered, where people feel, yes, I can do it without getting yourself into trouble, or without, how do you create that culture where people are not scared to come to you? And I have to say that, in ISB, when we started, to me, it was a learning lesson. I said, these are things I've been told. How the hell do I create it? I can't just put a board which says, don't worry. How do you? And I think this, yet again, is a consistent culture of all of these people. I'm sorry, consistent ability of all of these people to create a culture that makes those people empowered. I think it is not that simple. I think what happens is, first of all, they're able to attract the right people because they have put that great vision, because they have got that people to they somehow manage. And this is where I also find a risk. What happens is, when that initial lot of people move out, the next lot that come in somehow is not the same. So organizations, we talk of organizations going through various stages. There's the startup stage, there is then the consolidation, the growth stage, and then the reason that happens at that stage is because now you've got the middle, what I would call as the middle class mentality come in, not the risk takers, not the people who are interested in. And I think this is something I don't have an answer to it, frankly. But it's something that, pardon my saying it, and maybe if I'm wrong if I say it, but the Maruti of today is not that same Maruti. I would have thought that the Maruti of today would actually take the lead in building the safest cars. So how is it that we lose that culture, and what do we need to do to continuously enrich and keep that culture going, is something that I'm curious, and I'm, this is where I say, I sit on the front and say, where is it? What could be? I don't know the answer. I would love somebody to tell me the answer. So to me, those were the 5 building blocks. There is the vision, there is the ability to take everyone forward, there is the ability to collaborate, I'm saying doers, and for that doers to build that culture. There are many, many more other things, but when I became a consultant, I was taught always restricted to 3. This time I've taken the liberty of going to 5. Please excuse me. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was truly, your words have marked an excellent tribute to Dr. V. Krishnamurthy. I think it was more like, Krishnamurthy was innovation before the digital era, where he, transformed so many organizations. Yes, I also remember when he said the shared purpose, sir. Dr. Krishnamurthy always used to say, if you have a shared purpose within the organization, you don't really need the supervision, right? So that's a remarkable, aspect of this. And I also quote when he received this Business Man of the Year 1987, the panel said, Krishnamurthy's leadership has shown that he can achieve stupendous tasks. If for any reason at all he fails, virtually the entire public sector will have to be written off for the next 20 years. I mean, that's the kind of statement that they have made at that time. Yes, one was the mission, the shared mission. The other element is the culture. I think across all organizations, he worked on the culture and the people and their mindset. I think that's what was primarily the change management that has taken place in all the 3 public sectors that he has worked with. Thank you very much, sir. It was, really very nice of you. I think before I request my director to present the vote of thanks, just a small quote here. You can shed tears that he is gone, or you can smile because he has lived. You can close your eyes and pray that he'll come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that he has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see him, or you can be full of the love you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember him and only that he is gone, or you can cherish his memory and let it live on. Author of 9 books and 60 academic industrial papers, former chairman and group executive officer of Capgemini. We're fortunate that he has chosen to be the director of this institution. We request you to, sir,
Yeah, thank you.
present your.
Yeah, thank you very much. Before I propose vote of thanks, I was also student of Venkatraman Krishnamurthy. Okay, the two legendaries I think this country had in the corporate history is my version. Okay, one is Dhirubhai Ambani and second is Mr. V. Krishnamurthy. I don't know about him much. When I started my career with NTPC, my boss was IP Hazarika, who later on became a director HR for NTPC, member of parliament from Assam. He was sharing with me one experience he had with VK while working for BHR. So IP Hazarika was the HR manager and VK was the chairman. So once he came for a visit to one of the plants, then he happened to meet him. He asked him, "What do you do? How do you spend your day?" He said very proudly, "I am a quick file pusher in public sector, proposals and all. I push about 50, 60 proposals a day." He said, "Then okay, how many people do you meet?" He said, 6, 7 people. "Tomorrow onwards, meet 60, 70 people. Hopefully you will be you will have opportunity to push only 5, 6 proposals." That stayed with me for very, very long. And afterwards, when I started observing him, some people like him, whether they have one life is very, very doubtful. Because he was chairman and managing director for SAIL, BHL, Maruti, Gas Authority of India Limited, secretary to Government of India, member of Planning Commission, worked with 5 prime ministers, and continued to be on the forum of several forums in the country, interacted with premier management institutes, with all professors who had done PhDs in abroad, taught students, but all they have learned from him, he was just a diploma holder. That was a shocker. And I think some people, they are like that, they're born visionaries and they're always curious. They're great with working people. So it is a great fortune of COD to associate with him. So now on behalf of COD, I would thank all of you for participating in this event. Thank Mr. Ajit Ranganekar for those 5 building blocks sharing with us on this occasion. Always learning through role models and putting them into a framework like a consultant. It is a great help for people to know. Thank you, Mr. Jaikar Krishnamurthy, for coming all the way and spending time with us. And your father, see that is a great role model for many, many. So, Mr. Abhay Shankar, thank you very much. And Jack, for convincing Mr. Ajit and bringing him here to give this special talk. Many, many thanks to you, to the entire COD board. Thanks to all of you. Thank you very much. And the last, probably I'm going to request Dr. Madhavi probably work on biography of Dr. VK, because that itself going to be a great management book for many. Thank you very much. Thank you.